one of the bands who've been seriously upcoming in the world of death metal in the last few years is Frozen Soul. And this is their new record, Glacial Domination. They are from Texas, and of that wave of death metal bands who are particularly kind of charged forward with the baton to take over the conversation, since about 2019, I guess, is when the conversation sort of really started to lean into this particular camp of bands. They're the ones who have sort of the crossover with hardcore audiences primarily, so your Sanguisuga Bogs, 200 Stab Wounds, Tribal Gaze. I think aside from Undeath, who do kind of feel the most kind of ingrained in purely death metal culture, I guess, Frozen Soul are my favourite of those. Like, certainly of the kind of ex-Maggot Stomp bands. Like, I really, really enjoyed their debut album, Cryptovice, which we reviewed right at the start of 2021. I thought it had some of just the purely, like, catchiest old-school death metal riffs of that year, which is often the part where some of these new bands kind of falter. Again, like, them and Undeath have been, like, the genuinely strong songwriters of that crop. I enjoy the atmosphere, the cold school death metal, that, you know, frigid, hypothermic kind of feel in death metal. And they are one of the bands of that lot who I've been able to catch live as well, because they came over to the UK with Dying Fetus very recently, and they were a fearsome proposition there. Sam, I know when we reviewed Cryptovice, you were ironically a little lukewarm on it, but you are not adverse to just, you know, meaty, good death metal songwriting like this. Elliot, what are your thoughts on, I guess, so far, Frozen Soul as kind of a band of promise?
Yeah, I really like the last record. It wasn't up there for me in terms of, like, for me, it wasn't up there with the best death metal albums of recent years. I wouldn't say it was up there with like Hidden History of the Human Race or Suicide Euphoria.
That's like comparing it to fucking Dark Side of the Moon, you know?
But I would say they might be, of all the new death metal bands, I think they might actually be the best at sitting in the 4/4 zone. And there's not a lot doing that, sort of building songs at that kind of speed. And for me, it's such a gap in the market in that sense, because that's why like Domination by Morbid Angel is so great. One of the reasons why Heartwork is so great. It's the crunch. And when in death metal now, so many bands are either pure filth or kind of eye-rollingly brainy, and I love bands in each camp, but it's cool to have a band that just slam hard.
Yeah, their second album is one of the things from this world that would have had the most curiosity around it anyway, because not only are we dealing with a second album from a decently popular new band, but this album also marks the producer debut of Matt Heafy, the Trivium frontman, who we have long praised Matt Heafy for his approach to kind of promoting newer artists. Like, he's always someone who has his finger on the pulse and will take to social media to point fans of, you know, his very popular mainstream metal band towards genuinely underground artists and like new faces alike. So it doesn't surprise me that he was in on Frozen Soul. There was the intriguing question of like, how would a guy who makes music that sounds like that make his kind of approach malleable to produce an underground death metal band?
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, the instinct is to think, is he going to make it really clean, like overly precise? You know, that was a worry. And
it definitely is more so than the debut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for me, this is less of a tornado of stalactites, and it's more like just a ton of snow being dropped on your head. And, you know, on one hand, maybe you think some of the mystery is gone, or the allure. But for me, I think if these songs did have the production that Cryptovice had, I would kind of hope for it to have maybe something a bit more clean, something a bit more precise, something a bit more meaty. Because I think they've written songs that are suited to that production style.
Yeah, I think I didn't have any sort of issue with the production. I forgot it was kind of Matt Heafy had done it, and I was like, oh yeah, like he just makes these sound just big, meaty death metal grooves and big riffs, and it just sounds hard, and I'm cool with that.
Well, I mean, it starts with like a horror harpsichord stab or whatever, just kind of, and that's always
There's
good.
weird synth bits that are the one thing we're going to probably come up with. But
well, I mean, I was taken aback by the manic approach of that first riff when it comes in. It's almost like a kind of Cannibal Corpse thrashing aggression. I think this record is pretty fucking rad. Like, I put this on, and immediately I was having so much fun, like scrunching my face up, pumping my fist. For a start, again, it's the core thing in their sound that was already there, but I just love their like rolling tank approach to death metal riffs. Like, when Invisible Tormentor sets into its main verse, it is so thick and crushing and powerful. And like a few years ago, at some point in the last decade, Bolt Thrower became the band that every band wanted to wear t-shirts of. But I don't know if any newer band has taken to writing Bolt Thrower riffs as effectively as Frozen Soul have.
yeah, no, that sort of like where they sort of steamroll through these riffs, the sort of the drum beats, the riffs. I had a really good time with this, which I wasn't necessarily sure I was going to after being a bit, you know. The first one was right. I don't know if I just sort of turned the switch on my brain and was just like, enjoy the caveman, just like slamming riffs. But there is a bit more to it. But yeah, just the way they just lay into a riff, it just is really hard. And just, you're right, just sort of scrunch your face and just nod your head and just stomp around. It hit that button for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Full House, I think this is really solid, fucking great throughout, because ultimately it does more or less one thing, but it does it really effectively. Like, it's bludgeoning, there's no room to breathe, there's almost no coming up for air. Most of this record is just the slamming might of Frozen Soul playing on 10. And it's not going to win a Pulitzer Prize, but it does make you pull the face, and sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, and you're right, it does. Obviously, it's got one sort of, it's playing a style of death metal, but I do think this record has songs that you can go, oh yeah, it's that one, right? Like, it's not just the same, sort of murk over and over. Like, there are really distinct things on it. Again, Invisible Tormentor has so many more sick tempo changes than I expected. When it goes into that fucking Mortician stomp in the middle, is so good. Arsenal War is like that.
The opening run is just killer.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal War is like that thrashing tempo that's really cool. The production sound, again, when we spoke about the first single, I was slightly taken aback by it, because I'm so used to these records having that kind of level of like churning darkness to them. Trivium records sound great for being Trivium records, but I wasn't sure how I felt about that level of like pristineness being applied to an old school death metal record. But then I guess you think about, like, again, you mentioned it, Heartwork, right? Like, that's a extremely state-of-the-art production job for what before was the band who just made Necroticism. Like, it's mental. And I think if you are like a kind of death metal casual, and you mainly listen to maybe less extreme styles of death metal, I think go for this, and you might have a lot of fun with it, because it sounds massive in the way that like more mainstream metal can do. And I think crucially, it doesn't sound super, processed or compressed or whatever. It still sounds like you can hear them laying it down in the studio, but it sounds really professional in a way that you might not expect. And I think that the way these riffs just make you in that like primal, digestible way want to bang your head along, it's the same principle that we've said about something like Spirit World or whatever, just done in death metal. It's just like killer grooves.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the things that made me vibe with this, is that it is really like, it's not murky and kind of like doesn't feel like there's like a layer of like muck you got to work through to really get into it. The songs sound really like pristine without sounding clinical and lifeless. The vocals, again, not as much character as say character we were talking about, but there's a real clarity.
I think the guy does have quite a lot of character. Obviously, not you
can't
compare Travis Ryan, but I think I can pick this guy out of our lineup.
Yeah, no, that's it. Not as much as what we were talking about. I didn't want to, but it's never really character vocalist, but there is clarity.
This is the kind of vocalist who I would enjoy hearing doing guest spots on other band songs, right? Like, if I was listening to another track from 200 Stab Wounds or whatever it may be, and this guy from Frozen Soul turns up, I'd go like, yes, that guy.
Hearing him like bottling on like a Knock Loose track, even like a hardcore
I would
band, is like really
fucking love to hear that.
Lay in on like a really heavy bit, like that'd be really cool. Yeah, and they've got like just little like the little at the start of Death and Glory, that'll carry you in my Arsenal of War. Like he's able to get those lines and those vocal hooks in there that I was like, oh yeah, cool. I can go with this. And I think the production, it sounds big without not losing any of the meanness, and that really I found really a fun combo.
Yeah, I think the vocal hooks for me do a lot to justify the clean production, because for me, the thing for me wasn't necessarily that I thought it was going to be too clean. I just wondered if Matt Heafy is a slightly too technically minded musician to move into sort of producing death metal records. Because, you listen to those albums, there's never a bum note. He's so, he nails it every single time. And when you look at his guitar strap, that is not someone with a lot of sort of fuck it energy. And to be honest, so when he moved over to do this, I did think, are Frozen Soul going to get a bit mechanical? Is it going to be too perfect? Is he going to be telling them to redo things? But the vocal hooks, if they were buried in the level of murk that the last record had, I would be thinking, this album is too big for this production job. So, even though my gut reaction is like, bit more grit, please. Listening to it, I think the songs and the production work in tandem this time around.
Well, I think one of those moments where you might think about Matt Heafy's influence are the fact that it does have more coaxed out vocal hooks. And, again, this kind of class of bands, a lot of the time it can be quite, indecipherable. I think Frozen Soul were like already primed to do that and already ahead, because get like the title track on Crypt of Ice, like they've had those things before. And again, I really like the singer's voice. It's that it tapped into the part of my brain that has never gotten over Carl Bullott's going World Eater and like Assimilator has got the same feeling on this. But
you got the Forged in Ice on this, like
all
the shit like that.
You think about Matt Heafy again, like he's worked with so many producers in Trivium, David Draymond, of course, but, like, really helping vocal arrangements pop. And the ending of that song with the, see the blood drain in his casket, you will writhe in pain, into the drop. which I thought he was going to say "Rive in Peace" at first, which would have absolutely made it. But like most songs have a really like probably the title of them will be a really legible kind of roar along part. Again, they had the fact they have the Frozen Soul like eponymous track. It's so fun to hear him snarling all over that where you can actually hang on to the words and the cadence of his words. Like I have never heard someone make the word abominable have a rhythm to it that is so catchy as like abominable on this. It's really fun. And when they put that together with the like the crispness of the sound, where it doesn't sound like a subterranean monster like it was on Crypt of Ice, but when they do those riffs like Death and Glory, it sounds so metal and so sharp. Like someone found a way to make Mortician riffs sound like contemporary metal. Like I can't believe it.
I think like it's not got that like that dingy dark Crypt of Ice, but when you look at the cover, it's got like a slightly grander, more epic feel to it, while still just being really just like hard, tough death metal. And I think it's a really fun blend. That.
Yeah, and then when they put that vocal ability together with the instrumental arrangements, there's like that arsenal of war, and it all drops out, and like the mid-pace riff after it drops out. That made me like pop in my fucking seat when I was listening to it. Like there are multiple parts in this record where I made a noise because a particularly satisfying riff came in, and like even though again it's in a similar vein, it kept doing it, but like that bendy riff like halfway through the very last track is one of the absolute nastiest in it, so it's still delivering it. They go like super full-on slammy at times, like Morbid Effigy might as well be Dying Fetus, so the bit when John Gallagher turns up is like supernatural and really fun, but they put that together with these more foreboding energies, which is really cool, and the title track has an almost like a monomarth riff, which is an amazing flavour to hear in that, and I think that is the song they said they co-wrote with Matt Heafy, and you can hear that, because it's that kind of like melodic metal riffing, but it's on this like fist sluggy tempo, and it's a really unique, cool combination.
That's my favourite song on the record, and I think it is that
the biggest hit.
Doomy, melodic take on what Frozen Soul are doing on the rest of it, because, you know, the big slamming riff, they've already nailed that. Like, they no notes for any of that. But adding a kind of melodic take on it, I think just as a thing in the middle of the record, particularly after that Annihilation sort of frosty slasher soundtrack bit of synth work for an interlude, it's not going to make this record a multi-dimensional, you know, who knows what's going to happen next on the Frozen Soul album, but it does...
I mean, I didn't see that coming.
No, exactly. To me, that's one, I suppose. But then on the title track, not the title track, the band title track. What do they call those? Eponymous songs?
Eponymous tracks,
Eponymous,
yeah. Just to clarify, the title track here is Glacial Domination. The eponymous track is, of course, Frozen Soul. There are both of them on this record. Cheers, lads.
Yeah, on the eponymous track, having that kind of heightened drama, I'd like to see them do more of that in the future. And not necessarily because it's like, oh, you're going to be a bigger band that way. I just think it makes them sound a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like Bolt Thrower had that epic sensibility to them, and so it is cool to hear bands... Again, like Sanguisugabog or whatever, are never gonna... They're not built to do that kind of thing. So it's been nice to hear one of these bands sort of going a bit, you know, large scale like that. And the fact that this has like solos as well. Like the solo in Abominable goes fucking crazy. Like they do that while also being like a really like purely headbangable band, which is such a good feeling. Like these guys write great riffs and they know how to arrange a song to make those riffs pop in sequence with another. It's, you know, it's not rocket science, but they're fucking good at it.
Somebody's just got to respect the basics, haven't you, really, of just being able to like put that together in a way that is really satisfying to hear.
Yeah, like I don't think this band, even though again they have made some leaps like Glacial Domination and stuff, but they don't feel like they're trying to go super hard beyond what they are capable of. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It feels like a band who are very confident in their identity and like what kind of death metal they want to play and what sort of atmosphere and feeling they want Frozen Soul to evoke. And like when you see these guys playing together, they feel so locked in, like they're just heads down, plowing the instruments, marching forward. They can add in a bit of VHS death metal atmosphere with some horror synths when they
I was about to say, at most, they drop some 80s synths, which I'm like, I kind of was like, if you're going to do this in future, maybe try and integrate them into the songs more rather than, you know, just tacked onto the beginning and end.
Yeah, but like, of all the bands who are
like,
going to be writing songs about The Thing, it might as well be the band who sing about ice anyway, right? And then Atomic Winter has got some fucking Godzilla stuff going on.
Yeah, no, like, that stuff I find was just like a fun flavour, a bit throwaway, but, you know, I was like, I'm not going to object to them mixing it in there just to give the odd little change of sound to sort of separate out the tracks so it doesn't all just become one endless kind of like onslaught of riffs.
Yeah. I'd forgotten that they're playing the Thursday of Bloodstock this year, which is going to be killer. I don't know if there's another band, I think like you said, Elliot, carrying on the kind of groove death metal spirit of like Bolt Thrower and Obituary better than this right now. Like I think there's more intense, boundary pushing, extreme stuff or whatever, but just for like thick, catchy hook tunes that make you want to nod your head, this record doesn't quit.
No, and to be honest, like it's weird that that's a unique thing. Like that's a selling point, that it's like, it's basic and does the thing that it's basic in doing to a really high standard. And sometimes all it takes is a bit of frostiness to make yourself stand out. So for me, as a follow-up, again, initially I had my reservations about the production initially. But after listening to it for a week or two, I think this is exactly what they should have done at the next stage. And honing in on that grooviness is a clever move.
Yeah, Glacial Domination by Frozen Soul.